Okay. Uh, uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, in today's class, we'll continue our discussion on the syntax analysis. So the other day we have seen what is context-free grammar and when to use context-free grammars and what is the relationship between context-free grammars and the syntax analysis that we have seen. And we have seen something called derivations. Derivation is the process of deriving the terminal strings from the starting symbol of the grammar by replacing one or more non-terminal by its corresponding uh, production rules, right hand sides of their corresponding production rules. Okay. So in this class, what we are going to do in today's class is that we'll have a brief overview of what is parsing. Then we'll see different kinds of parsing. Okay. Uh, like then we'll go for the uh, we'll have a discussion on top-down parsing, one of the categories of parsing, that is top-down parsing. And so before going to that, let me show you this. Okay. So coming to the parsers, as I told you earlier, there are different ways in which you can accomplish this parsing. Okay, parsing is a process of validating the structure of the source programs in compiler design. Okay, so this can be done in several ways. There are plenty of algorithms are available to perform the parsing process, right? Basically, the component which does parsing is called parser, or sometimes it is also called as syntax analyzer. Now, there are two types of parsers basically: top-down parsers and bottom-up parsers. Correspondingly, top-down parsing and bottom-up parsing. Okay, so under the top-down parsers, we have actually there are three techniques, but two are shown here: recursive descent parser and LL1. Okay, these two actually they comes under something called predictive parsing. Okay, under top-down parsing, you'll be having two things. One is backtracking parsers. The other one is predictive parsers. Under predictive parsers, we have again two types: recursive descent parser (RDP) and LL1. LL1. Okay, we'll see what is LL1 later in the due course time. When it comes to the bottom of parsing, under bottom of parsing, we'll have a set of LR parsers and operator precedence parser. Okay, there are two types of bottom up parsers. One is a set of LR parsers and operator precedence parser, right? So operator precedence parser is not there in your syllabus, and we'll study all these LR parsers in third unit. Okay, so your second unit is up to top down parsing. In the third unit, you will be see the more sophisticated parsers like LR0, SLR1, LLR1, and CLR1. Okay, so when it comes to the power, LR parsers or the top-down, I mean bottom-up parsing is more efficient than the top-down parsing. So there are some drawbacks in top-down parsers. They can parse only a limited set of grammars. Um, that too free from the all the problems, right? And there are some grammar problems are there. All the ill-formed grammars can leads to invalid, I mean, invalidation of the strings. Okay, so it is the responsibility of the user or the compiler designer or the language designer to design the grammar in such a way that it will produce the right statements or the right sentences of the language. Okay, the ill-formed grammars often leads to I mean inconsistency in the language, right? So we'll see those examples now. Then we'll move on to the top-down parsers. Screen not visible. screen is paused. Okay. Yes. Is it visible now? Yeah. So this is the big picture. In the next coming classes, next few coming classes, we will be discussing on this only, right? So we have two types of passes: top-down passes and bottom-up passes. Under the top-down passes, we have recursive descent passer and LL1. These two are comes under predictive passing, right? There is other kind of passing called backtracking passing, but that is obsolete. Nobody is using nowadays in the, I mean, current contemporary compilers, compiler design. They are not been used. They are obsolete. And when it comes to bottom-up parsing, again we have two types: LR parsers and operator precedence parsers. Under LR we have LR0, SLR1, LALR1, and CLR1. Okay. So bottom-up parsing is somewhat sophisticated than the top-down parsers, and the bottom-up parsing is exclusively used in the compiler design. Okay. Now let us. Okay. So in the last class we have seen up to this. We have seen the grammar definition, then we have seen some problems with the grammars. Okay. So generally the ill-formed context-free grammars often leads to inconsistency in the language. So it is the responsibility of the designer or the language designer or the compiler designer to take care, to check whether, to ensure that whether the grammar produce the right set of statements or not, right set of terminal strings or not. Okay. So in this particular lecture we are going to see the problems in grammars and how to rectify them, right? So the first thing that we are going to see here is the ambiguity. Okay. So some grammars, they may often lead to ambiguity, right? So what is ambiguity? Ambiguity is something like for the same sentence, if you are able to derive it, okay, if one can derive the same sentence from the grammar in two different ways, like having more than one leftmost derivation or having more than one rightmost derivation for the same sentence. Okay, as shown here, id plus id into id. This can be derived either like this or like this. This is leftmost derivation, and this is another leftmost derivation, right? So in either case, we say id plus id into id is ambiguous. It is an ambiguous statement or ambiguous statement, a string, right? So ambiguity often is a big problem in computer science actually. So if there is an ambiguous statement, then your system may hang. It doesn't know whether it has to follow the first form or the second form or something else. Okay, that we need to instruct manually or something. We need to automate that process, right? So if there is an ambiguity, there is a dilemma. The system cannot move further, right? So we need to eliminate ambiguity. So how to do that? So that we'll see. So one classical example to demonstrate the ambiguity is this one. So this is a classical grammar uh, for context-free grammar to denote the if-then-else statements. Okay, if-then-else condition statement. As you can see here, the statement could be if expression then statement. We have another rule. Statement could be if expression then statement else statement. Okay. Now let us consider there are three rules actually: statement, if expression then statement, or if expression then statement else statement, or other. Okay, other statement, right? Other means other statement other than the if then else. Now if you take a string like this: if e1 then s1, if e2 then s2 else s3. Okay, Now, if we take this statement, then this statement can be derived from this grammar in two different ways. Two different ways. As you can see here, this is the first way. Statement if expression then statement. We have applied the first rule here for expanding STMT. Then this EXPR is the non-terminal. This non-terminal is expanded with E1, where E1 is the other here. Okay, expression. Then this statement is again it is expanded with the second rule. If expression then statement else statement. Okay, then this expression is expanded with E2, another expression. This statement with S1 and this statement with S2. Now if you look at the same step, I mean this, for the same string, that can be derived in another format here, a different derivative tree. Okay, so what I mean to say here is this grammar is ambiguous. Of course, this grammar always produce ambiguous statements. Ambiguous statements. Okay, so it's a classical example for ambiguity. This dangling else problem, right? So the main problem here is if you apply this grammar, we don't know whether which else is part of which if, something like if you have two ifs followed by a single else. Okay, if then else. Okay, then we don't know whether this else is part of the first if or the second if. Okay, so that is the main problem. Okay, so how to resolve this? Generally ambiguity, it is grammar specific. I mean resolving the ambiguity is grammar specific. It varies from grammar to grammar. Okay, so the ambiguity from this particular dangling else problem can be resolved like this, by adding extra production rules. So what we did here is we have added this matched statement and open statement. Statement could be matched statement. Matched statement in the sense, if there is a then, there should be an else. Okay. So in the previous case, if you look at the previous grammar, previous version of I mean dangling else problem, I mean grammar, it may produce more thans followed by less number of else's, or less thans followed by more number of else's. Okay, that should not be happen. Okay, how to rectify that? For that, what we are doing here is we are rewriting the grammar in such a way that it will eliminate the ambiguity. Okay, so this is how we are doing that. It's pretty simple. All that you need to do is, we have introduced a new non-terminal called match statement and open statement. Okay, we have introduced two non-terminals. Matched statement. What is matched statement? Matched statement is if expression then followed by matched statement followed by else followed by matched statement. That means we have incorporated a rule in such a way that every then and else must contain a matched statement. Okay, in between then and else there must be a matched statement. Okay, so if you apply the rule, then what happens is it will always produce a properly nested if then else statements. Okay, so what I mean to say here is, here we have resolved the ambiguity by means of adding a new production rules. Okay, and we have rewritten the grammar in such a way that the newly written grammar it may not produce the ambiguous statements. Okay, so this is how we will eliminate the ambiguity from the dangling else problem. As I told you earlier, it varies from grammar to grammar. Another problem with the grammars is that I think you might have studied this in your flat course. So let us consider a grammar like this: A derives SA, SAB, and S derives a, small a, or small d. Okay. So if you look at this grammar, there is no production rule corresponding to non-terminal B. Okay. So we have A's production rules and we have S production rules, but we don't have B's production rules. That means that means this particular grammar cannot terminate. Okay, like if you use A derives SAB, SAB, then if you replace this S with either small a or d, let me use small a, then b. Okay, then if you replace this small a, okay, capital A with again SAB, SAB. Okay, if you keep on doing like this, okay, then what happens is it will never generate a terminal string. It will never generate terminal string. It always leads to sentential form. Sentential form is something like a combination of terminals and non-terminals. Okay, but our intention is we need to generate terminal string, terminal string, but that should not happen here. Okay, so such grammars are said to be useless, useless grammars. Okay, and moreover there is a particular non-terminal which cannot be used in the derivation process. Why? Because there is no production rules corresponding to that particular symbol. Hence why we can say B is useless, or in other words we can say B is unreachable, right? So this is one more problem, right? So if there is a useless grammar or unreachable set of productions, that grammar could be, if there is a grammar, the grammar should be produce terminal strings. Otherwise, it is said to be useless grammar. Another big problem with the context-free grammars is that this one. I think you might have learned this unit productions. A derives B, and B derives C, and C derives D, and D derives say small a or small ab. Okay. Ultimately, D derives small ab. Small ab is the terminal string. This particular grammar, it is useful. Okay, as far as the grammar is concerned, it is useful. But for deriving AB, for deriving AB, you have to apply all these production rules. These are said to be unit production rules. A to B first you need to apply, then B should be expanded with C, then C should be expanded with D, then D should be expanded with EB, so that we will get the right match. Right? So the main problem with here is we need to apply more number of steps, more number of derivative steps. Okay. So it will take more time. Obviously, it will take more time. So instead of having these unit productions, we why don't you remove them? Right? Because by simply adding this DD as AB, that's enough. There is no need to have the prior rules A to B, B to C, and C to D in the grammar. Okay, they will delay the parsing process. So this is another problem with the grammars. And the third problem is this one. A derives epsilon, null string, or null production rules. Null production rules. Null productions. So if there is a null production, that means it is going to be terminated at that particular instance itself. Okay, so it cannot be derived further, or we cannot get the more terminal strings. If you have more null productions, there may be a chance of getting less number of statements or less number of strings in the long case. Okay, so it is always advisable to have less number of null predictions in your grammars, right? These are some general problems. So next we'll see the problems related to the top-down parsing. So there is something called left recursion. Okay, this is the major problem in grammars when we use top-down parses. The top-down parsing, what happens is a particular non-terminal is expanded with its right-hand side of the production rule. Okay, right. As you can see here, any grammar with this type of production rules, A derives A alpha, A alpha. Okay, so the key thing that you need to observe here is on the left hand side we have A. On the right hand side, the leftmost non terminal or the leftmost symbol happens to be A here. Okay, if the leftmost symbol on the right hand side of an expression of a production matches with the leftmost non I mean the left hand side non terminal, then such a production rule is said to be left recursive production rule. Left recursive production rule. So the problem with the left recursive production rules is that they always leads to infinite loop. Like if you expand A with A alpha, let us assume you have only a single production rule for A. Then again you have to expand A with A alpha, so that you will get A alpha. Okay, right? Again A alpha alpha you will get, not A alpha alpha, like this. Okay, it will never terminate. It will always produce sentential forms, not terminal strings, right? So how to eliminate left recursion? If the grammar contains left recursion, that's going to be a big problem in top-down parsing. We need to eliminate it. Okay, how to eliminate left recursion from the grammars? After elimination, both the grammars will produce the same kind of language or the same kind of strings, right? In power, they should be same, but after transformation, the transformed grammar must be non-left recursive. Okay, so how to do that? Here is a rule for eliminating the left recursion. Okay, if there are production rules in the form of A derives A alpha or beta, we may replace it with, okay, we are simply applying a grammar transformation here. The transformation is this one. This grammar is transformed like this: A derives beta A dash, where A dash is the new non-terminal. Okay, we have introduced a new non-terminal called A dash, and A dash derives to alpha. What is alpha? The second portion, the remaining portion in the left recursive production rules, followed by the new non-terminal A dash or epsilon, right? Like this grammar will produce things like beta alpha alpha alpha, like this. Okay, the same thing can be derived from this grammar also. Like if you take a beta A dash, so I have taken the first rule. Now A dash derives to alpha beta. I am replacing A dash with alpha A dash. Again this A dash is replaced with alpha A dash. Finally I am replacing this A dash with epsilon. Okay, now you can see beta alpha alpha, right? So we are getting this thing. So what I meant to say here is the previous grammar and the transformed one, both are equal in power. Both will derive the same set of strings, but the second one is non-left recursive. Okay, why? Because here we have A on the left hand side, but here we have beta, being the leftmost non-terminal on the right hand side. Similarly, here we have alpha. So they are non-left recursive. Non-left recursive. So this is how we'll. Emma, hello. Next.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we'll see one more problem, that is left factoring. Left factoring is something like if you have two production rules which starts with a common prefix, as you can see here, statement derives if expression then statement, else statement, or if expression then statement. If you observe here, the prefix of this particular right hand side of the production rule exactly matches with the another uh, uh, production rule, right hand side of another production rule. Okay, this may leads to confusion. Okay, whenever you're trying to expand STMT, whether we have to go for this one or this one, we don't know. This is NDFA. It is something like NDFA, non-deterministic mass state machines. Okay, but the same input symbol will be having two different paths. Will be having, you may have different new states. Okay, different next states. So that is a big problem here, right? So how to eliminate this? So what we'll do is we'll factor it. Like if we have A derives alpha beta 1 and alpha beta 2, then we'll transform this like this. A derives alpha followed by